Kermit, and I'm an old soldier with a story to tell. And the story is the combat history of the United States Army, as depicted in this book, which I recently completed, The Battle History of Sacrifice and Courage. Of course, it's the sacrifice and courage of the American soldier. And these stories detail the 192 campaigns that the American Army has fought since its inception in 1775. At any rate, what I'm going to do today is introduce the first part of the book, hence the need for my notes, because I'm going to read, at least partially read, the introduction that's included in the book. Each of those 192 campaigns is a unique story. And part of that story is told by participants, soldiers who were actually there. And my purpose in that regard is to put a human face on an historic event. And I think it's very important for us to understand that the history of the Army is the history of soldiers, men and women who were focused on accomplishing their missions. Soldiers who fought in those campaigns provide insights into our national experience that's simply not otherwise possible. And to hear them speak from across the years allows us to better understand the world they lived in, as well as their successes and their triumphs. Their voices provide an opportunity to more fully appreciate how a true band of brothers and sisters have always believed that their mission was more important than self. We're also reminded how their contributions tie together our national experience. These campaign streamers, as detailed in this book, honor their lives and deaths while describing a comprehensive combat history of the United States Army. Recognizing the Army's campaign history with streamers is a relatively recent development, although battle credits were displayed by individual units for more than 150 years. The precedent for visually recording a unit's combat history was first established during the early days of the Civil War. On 25 August 1861, Major General John C. Fremont, following a fight at Wilson's Creek near Springfield, Missouri, ordered each regiment that was engaged to embroider the word Springfield on their national colors, on the stars and stripes carried by color bearers in the very first rank of each regiment. As an aside from the introduction, I think that it's appropriate to say a few words about Fremont. He was a character that was well known before the Civil War. And in fact, he conducted several very detailed surveys in the Rocky Mountains prior to the Mexican-American War of 1846, and was known at the time as an intrepid explorer, surveyor, and map maker. At any rate, he arrived in California as the Mexican-American War opened in 1846, and when he learned that the war with Mexico had started, he demanded and accepted the Mexican commander's surrender. And at that point, Fremont insisted that he was the military governor of California. However, a General Stephen Kearny soon arrived with official orders, making him the governor of California. And there was an acrimonious meeting of the two. And in fact, Kearny charged Fremont with insubordination and court-martialing. Fremont was found guilty, and he was so incensed that he resigned his commission and stayed in California. He took possession of a tract of land, started a big ranch, and discovered gold on his land, which made him a wealthy man. He got involved in local politics, and in fact, he was the first senator from California, from the new state of California, appointed by the California state legislature. It's interesting to note that state legislatures appointed insiders to be U.S. Senators, a practice that persisted until 1912, when the 17th Amendment to the Constitution then required that senators elected by the voters of their states. At any rate, Fremont was a senator for a relatively short period of time, and then he was the first presidential candidate put forward by the new Republican Party, and he was defeated and returned to his ranch. Of course, it was Abraham Lincoln, the second presidential nominee by the Republican Party, who was elected in 1861 at the start of the Civil War. And when Lincoln was elected, he appointed Fremont a major general of the United States Army and gave him the mission of clearing Confederates out of the state of Missouri. And that brings us to the battlefield at Springfield later in 1861. Following actions in Missouri, Fremont was ordered to the Shenandoah Valley to corral Stonewall Jackson, who at that time was running wild and frightening Washington from his exploits in the valley. Fremont, unable to put the clamps on Stonewall Jackson, was again criticized, and I'm not sure that anybody in Washington fully appreciated the difficulties of corralling Stonewall Jackson, but at any rate, Fremont got a lot of criticism. It upset him, and he resigned his commission again and went off to New York and dropped from sight as far as the Army was concerned. He eventually died in 1890 in New York. And now, back to the introduction. On Christmas Eve, 1861, the Congress approved General Fremont's initiative to recognize the Springfield fight. At that time, each regiment already had its name embroidered on the center stripe of its American flag. And when the names of battles were added, Old Glory became a proud display of the unit's history, its combat identity, and every soldier recognized he was saluting his regiment's heroes and their glorious achievements when he saluted the unit's national colors. Rallying around the flag meant defending the regiment's reputation and its honor. Recovering the national flag from a fallen comrade or protecting it from capture during a battle was of paramount importance, and numerous instances are recorded of heroism concerning the Stars and Stripes. One example was provided during the 1863 Chattanooga campaign, when First Lieutenant Arthur MacArthur, the father of Douglas MacArthur, a soldier with the 24th Wisconsin Volunteer Infantry, carried their national flag to the crest of Missionary Ridge at a critical moment in the battle and was awarded the Medal of Honor. In similar fashion, Private Charles Day, assigned to Company K, the 210th Pennsylvania Volunteer Infantry, received the Medal of Honor when he inspired the soldiers of his regiment by saving the Stars and Stripes from capture at Hatcher's Run, Virginia in February of 1865. Now, the end of the Civil War found national flags embroidered with a variety of campaigns, battles, and individual regimental skirmishes, some of them relatively minor, since there was no standard for defining various kinds of combat actions. It was up to the regimental commander to decide what would be embroidered on that regiment's national colors. In 1866, the Office of the Adjutant General, in a first step toward cataloging the Army's battle history, requested that regimental commanders provide lists of the battles that their units had participated in. Several regiments claimed more than 60 battles. some little known and otherwise lost to history. The 4th Infantry Regiment's national colors, as an example, listed an 1835 action at Huila, Florida, and another fight in 1855 on the Puyallup River in Texas. The resulting compendium was included in the 1866 edition of the Army Register, the Army's official publication. In 1877, a decision was made to standardize how regiments could record their battle histories on their national flags. General William T. Sherman, then Commanding General of the United States Army, recommended a board of officers to convene to define what constitutes a battle and to determine what portion of a regiment had to be engaged to have the name of that battle inscribed on their national flag. The board, chaired by Major General Winfield Scott Hancock, determined a battle must be an important engagement between the United States Army and an enemy that determines a question of policy or strategy. And it was decided that 2 or more companies of a regiment had to be engaged in that battle to include the name on the regiment's national flag. The board also clarified a question concerning regiments that were being formed through consolidations. And the new regiment would inherit the honors of all the units assigned to that newly formed unit. The War Department changed how regiments would display their battle honors in 1890. The tradition of embroidering names on the national flag was discontinued, and regiments were directed to provide the names of battles in which one or more companies, troops, or batteries have been engaged. Engraved silver rings bearing the names of those battles would then be provided to the regiment at the department's expense. And now to digress again for just a moment. I think it's interesting to consider how attitudes have changed concerning the way our national flag is treated. Today, we're uncomfortable about what might be seen as defacing the flag with extraneous messages, which was previously how Army units preserved and displayed their combat history. But over the last century, the American flag has come to represent the nation and is honored and esteemed, and any disrespect shown the flag is generally seen as an insult to the United States. That's why American haters and other enemies burn the flag and otherwise mistreat our national colors as a way of challenging or insulting the United States. For years, Americans have put their right hands over their hearts while reciting the Oath of Allegiance or observing the national anthem and facing Old Glory, the most revered symbol of our patriotic loyalty and devotion. And now, back to the introduction. The Adjutant General of the Army was required to announce the inscriptions on those silver rings. For the first time, the War Department participated in naming battles while standardizing this display, using silver rings or bands as they came to be known to record a unit's history only lasted 29 years and was discontinued in 1919 because of the cost associated. In October of 1919, following the end of World War I, the first official list of campaigns, some 76 in number, was published by the War Department. And now that the use of silver rings had been discontinued, the names of authorized campaigns, not battles, would be embroidered on a qualifying regiment's regimental flag rather than the stars and stripes that had earlier been common practice. Some regimental flags were still overburdened with inscriptions. So 8 months later, in June of 1920, the War Department changed the regulation again. Regimental flags would no longer record the names of campaigns, but now streamers, each embroidered with the appropriate campaign name and date, would be issued and attached to the staff of the unit's regimental flag. And that, of course, is the practice which we see today, and which is sort of the foundation for the way in which I'm going to tell the history of the United States Army through these campaign streamers. So the significant difference was the Army decided that the shift was going to be from individual battles to campaigns, larger campaigns. And embroidering regimental flags was going to be discontinued, and the use of campaign streamers was instituted. The Army War College was then tasked to review the published list of campaigns, and in April 1921, the historical section's list numbered 94 campaigns. 6 months later, 2 more were included, providing the War Department with a comprehensive list that remained unchanged until 1945. And additional campaign streamers were added to regimental flags with the surrender of the Axis powers, and later with the armistice in Korea. For almost 200 years, the United States Army did not have a flag. All of the other services had a service flag, but not the United States Army. The first Army flag was designed by the Heraldic Branch, Office of the Quartermaster General, and was presented to President Dwight D. Eisenhower on 12 June 1957. That's during his second administration. Pleased with this concept of recognizing the Army's service to the nation, the President issued an executive order approving the flag, which then provided a way for the Army to pull together all of the campaign streamers to be displayed at one location. Theretofore, campaign streamers were displayed with individual regimental colors. But now, with that official Army flag, all of the streamers could be displayed with that flag, which is the case today, of course. Unveiled on the 14th of June, on the Army's birthday, at Philadelphia, the Army's birthplace, the new flag was proudly accompanied by the 145 campaign streamers authorized at that time. The tradition of displaying campaign streamers at the unit level provided the precedent for the 1956 decision to gather the full set of streamers and display them with the newly approved Army flag. This development standardized the battle history of our Army while forever commemorating in dramatic color the sacrifice, courage, and service of American soldiers. More recent wars in Vietnam, Kuwait, Afghanistan, Iraq, and a number of interventions bring the current number of campaign streamers to 192. While each streamer highlights an event in the growth and development of the Army, as well as the nation, it's important to remember every campaign also represents the dedication and sacrifice of American soldiers accomplishing their missions. Listen carefully to the voices of some of those men and women as they recount their experiences in creating the battle history of the United States Army. The book also, of course, contains endnotes and recommended reading lists for each of the wars. And those recommended reading lists have been included for those who wish to dig a little bit deeper into some of the specifics of various campaigns. My next video will include the first 2 campaigns, Lexington and Ticonderoga. I've received a few comments that can start a conversation, and that's really the give and take that I appreciate most as far as these videos are concerned. So until then, all the best to each and every one of us, and God bless America.